Okay, we're missing John today. John, shout out to you. Hope you're doing okay. Any idea where John is? Okay, all right. Okay, so John, I'm gonna want to focus on this one, and Griffin. Griffin, we miss you as well. This would be the most challenging lesson that you have for this unit. After we get through this, then you should be ready to be able to get that A that you want on the test. So today is so fundamental to you moving forward. You can ask Maya if there's things that you need to remember for calculus. She'll say, yes, without a doubt, this is one you need to remember. Now, I want you to understand, I give you these formulas on the test. I like it when I understand where things come from as opposed to just having to memorize them. So I'm going to give you a chance to make associations today and understand where things come from. All trigonometry starts with this one idea, which is a squared plus b squared is c squared, which is what? The Pythagorean theorem. Now, from there, I'm going to write this. X squared plus y squared is r squared. That is a formula for what? That's the circle formula. Do we all agree that they are, in fact, the same? They are, in fact, the same. So what we said is that we now have this unit circle. What is a unit circle? It's a circle with a radius of 1. So therefore, if there's a radius of 1, we get x squared plus y squared is 1. Is everybody with me so far? So now watch. Last week, Thursday and Friday, we told you that we're in the unit circle. X is the same as something else, and y is the same as something else. What is x the same as? You just did it. Cosine. X is cosine, agreed? What is y? Sine. And if you think about that, you end up with, watch as I write this, cosine of theta squared plus sine of theta squared is equal to 1. Now, I'm going to rewrite that in a way that is important for you to remember. What this means is sine squared of theta means sine of theta squared. These two mean the same thing. This is how it's written mathematically. It means you take the sine of theta and then you square it. We don't put the squared after it, otherwise people confuse it with theta squared. You know what I mean? If I put the squared up there and it looks like theta squared, we don't want that. So it's sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. That is the first and most important trigonometric formula that you need to commit to memory. Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is 1. Maya, do you ever use that? Yes. So, just like you remember, the capital of the United States is? Washington, D.C. Seattle. And the first president of the United States was? George Washington. Okay? Abe Lincoln. That is fundamental and important. Now, we get a second one. Tangent of theta is equal to y divided by x. So sine was y and cosine was x and tangent was y divided by x. Well, tangent is y divided by x. We can also write that tangent is what? Sine of theta over cosine of theta, right? Because you have y on top, you got x on bottom. Tangent is sine over cosine. You're going to use that the rest of your math career. Got it? Number 3. If I have sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a new formula from that one. I'm going to choose to divide through by cosine squared of theta. That will give you super important formula number 3, which I give to you on the test. I just want you to help see where they come from. Somebody tell me, what is sine divided by cosine? Tangent. So sine squared divided by cosine squared is tangent squared of theta plus, what's cosine squared divided by cosine squared? 1. Does anybody remember from the other day what the reciprocal of cosine was? Secant. So secant squared of theta. Now, I'm going to do number 4. It's your last formula. Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. And instead of dividing through by sine squared, what do you think I'm going to divide through by? Or instead of dividing by cosine squared, I'm going to divide by sine squared. Okay. What is sine squared divided by sine squared? 1 plus cosine over sine would be cotangent. Don't say cot. Hit you with a marker. Anybody know what 1 over sine squared is? Cosecant squared. Okay. Reality check. I'm going to tell you what you're going to need and what you're really not going to need. The fact is, if you don't remember over time that sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, you don't remember that, you're going to struggle. You don't remember that tangent sine over cosine, you're going to struggle. We'll talk about the 2 when we get back, because one of them you really don't need to remember that much. So the second piece we need to set up is our quadrants. On this you will use quite a bit. In the first quadrant, you know that both values x and y are positive. And then in the second quadrant, we have a negative, positive. Third quadrant, negative, negative. And in fourth quadrant, we have positive, negative. So let us consider what we know about our trigonometric functions. In the first quadrant, both the x value and the y value are positive. So will sine be positive or negative? Sine is which value? Sine is the y value. So therefore, in the first quadrant, sine is positive. Great. Is cosine positive or negative in the first quadrant? Tangent is y divided by x. So will tangent be positive or negative? So you can see that all 3 are positive in the first quadrant. Consider the second quadrant. Which one or ones would be positive? Sine, y. Sine is the y value, and y is positive. So sine is positive in the second quadrant. Is cosine positive or negative? Cosine is negative because cosine is the x value, so cosine is negative. How about tangent? Tangent would be negative because tangent is y divided by x. A positive divided by a negative is in fact negative. Third quadrant, any positive? Why? Negative divided by negative is a positive. Very good. So tangent will be positive in the third quadrant. We can see that sine of theta and cosine of theta will be negative in the third quadrant. What about in the fourth quadrant? Any that are positive? Cosine is positive. Sine and cosine will be negative. Sorry. Sorry. Stop shouting at me, Hannah. You're yelling at me all the time. Okay, here we go. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. You want to be able to remember this? You got two ways. You got to choose one of two ways. Here's how I do it. Y is positive up. So sine is positive up, it's negative down. Cosine is x. X is positive to the right, negative to the left. So cosine is positive to the right, cosine is negative to the left. Tangent is y over x. So same sign, positive. Opposite signs, negative. That's how I think of it. Now, it turns out that some students don't think of it that way. When I came here 11, 12 years ago, I came across a statement that people were using, and I ended up finding it in the textbook, but this is a kind of a nice short saying that people use. All students take calculus. So what does that mean? All of them are positive in the first. Sine is positive in the second. Tangent is positive in the third. And cosine is positive in the fourth. Okay. Last piece that you should consider, we talked about positive and negative, but there's a number that exists between positives and negatives. What number is that? 0. So you should always also consider 1, 0, 0, 1, and negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. So if sine is the y value, then where is sine equal to 0? If sine is the y value, where is sine equal to 0? Along the x-axis. Everybody see that? If cosine is the x value, where is cosine equal to 0? Along the y-axis. Where would tangent be equal to 0? X-axis, right? Because we would have x or y divided by x, 0 divided by 1. So tangent along the x-axis is, or y-axis is undefined because you have 1 divided by 0. So understanding the nature of those that helps as well, and we'll practice as we move forward. Okay, good job. Flip into your notes to this section right here. You're going to look at a problem like this. Again, Jackson has joined us on a good day, but definitely a very complicated day. So you're kind of drinking water from a fire hose right now. A lot coming at you, but don't worry, we'll get figured out. Okay. All right. So let's go to, this is what your assignment today is going to be based upon. Okay, you're going to look at this example number 3, falls right below this, where it says find the values of 6 trigonometric functions given the following information. Okay. Yep, so you're right here. Good job. Good job. All right. So it says find the values of the 6, all 6. So we list sine of t, cosine of t, tangent of t, cosecant of t, secant of t, and cotangent of t. What do I already know? So I can write down -4/5. Everybody agreed? Now at this point, I still might call home. You got to write down one more thing. Which other one do you know so easily? Cosecant is the reciprocal, isn't it? -5/4. Folks, you write that down. I don't have to make the phone call home. Is it fair enough for me to expect that? You don't do that, that's embarrassing. And I say, parents, don't give them $5,000 next year for college. They're going to write IDK in their tests, even when they're given answers. I think that that's fair. I don't think I'm being too hard. I need to figure out the others. I'm going to use a formula. Given sine, I'm going to use a formula to figure out cosine. Sine squared of theta, or we have t as the variable here, I'll write sine squared of t plus cosine squared of t is equal to 1. So sine of t is -4/5. So I squared -4/5 plus cosine squared of t is equal to 1. Oh, forgot that squared. That's probably important. What do you get if you square -4/5? 16/25 plus cosine squared of t is equal to, I'm going to save some space here and some time. Instead of writing 1, I'm going to write 25/25. Now what? Subtract my 16/25. I get cosine squared of t is 9/25. Square root both sides. And I get cosine of t is equal to plus or minus 3/5. Shoot, I have to decide whether it's positive 3/5 or negative 3/5. Yes, Mr. Lane. We are told that it's sitting in the third quadrant. If it's in the third quadrant, you are on the left side. On the left side, cosine is negative because cosine is the x value. So yes, you are correct. Cosine is negative 3/5. Great, I've got that value. What other value can I now find? Secant is -5/3. Awesome. I wish that I had a formula that related sine, cosine, and tangent together. Yeah, it's sine divided by cosine is tangent. So tangent of theta is going, or I'm sorry, I'm using theta, the variable in this situation is t. Tangent of t is equal to -4/5 divided by -3/5. How do I do that? Multiply by my reciprocal, -5/3. See that the negatives cancel, and I get 4/3, which means cotangent is 3/4. Now, folks, that's the most straightforward example I could give you of these types of problems. This is what you're going to be working on today. Let's try one that's just slightly more challenging. Look at letter B. It says find all 6. I start by writing down sine of t, cosine of t, tangent of t, cosecant of t, secant of t, and cotangent of t. Where do I start? Cosecant is -2. What do I know then? Sine is the reciprocal, -1/2. Great. I've got 2 out of the 6. Piece of cake, upside down. All right. Now what? How? What formula? Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. What do I get if I square -1/2? 1/4 plus cosine squared is equal to 4/4. Now what? Cosine squared of t is equal to 3/4. Cosine of t is equal to plus or minus square root of 3/2. Is it positive or is it negative? Why? Henrik is thinking correctly. Can I take you through some of that thinking so everybody can understand here? Okay, there's multiple ways to reason this out. I will show you what I believe is the best way to figure this out. I'm going to think of, in this problem, they don't tell me which quadrant I'm in, do they? Is sine positive or negative? Sine is negative. Which quadrants was sine negative in? Do you remember? 3 and 4. Sine is y, so it's positive above. It's negative below. Everybody okay there? All right. Then it says cotangent is less than 0. What does it mean for something to be less than 0? It means it's negative. So that means tangent and cotangent are negative. Well, where was tangent negative? Remember from our work, where was tangent negative? It was negative in 2 and 4. So this is where I have 2 of the marks. I have 2 marks in the 4th quadrant. That means I'm working in the 4th quadrant. Was cosine positive or negative in the 4th quadrant? Positive. So therefore I have positive root of 3 over 2. How about secant? Two over the root of 3, which is 2 roots of 3 over 3. How do I figure out tangent? I take sine divided by cosine. Negative 1/2 divided by root of 3 over 2. How do I do that? And I get negative 1 over the root of 3. Pause. Okay, Alex is right. It's negative root of 3 over 3, but watch. I'm going to take this. Everybody agree that that's what tangent is? Don't I take the reciprocal to get cotangent? If you take the reciprocal of that, what do you get? Negative root of 3, right? Now, what Alex told me is that if you multiply the top by the root of 3, you get negative root of 3 over 3. Well, I'd rather flip that to get cotangent than flip that to get cotangent. Everybody agree?